do the thing with them.
Good evening, welcome to African Drums. I'm Elsie Harry and I'm glad you've joined me. Guyana celebrated her 50th anniversary of independence. Therefore, we must pause to learn from our failures, take stock of our achievements, and use the lessons learned thus far to chart our future course. In taking stock, it is important to note that Guyana's greatest and perhaps most untapped resource is her youth. Forming just over 50% of the population, it is interesting that the youth are hardly visible in Guyanese public life. In our recently concluded local government elections, we saw a modest number of youth candidates, most originating from Region 4, and an even smaller number of youth voters. This evening, I have with me a group of young people who are passionate about the advancement of Guyana. They dared to take up their rightful places as candidates in the local government elections. And I say dare because politics in Guyana has long been a veteran-dominated field. Although Youth for Local Government did not win a seat, they amassed a number of votes from various areas in which they contested. And we would definitely like to hear from them about their experience and their expectations for the future of Guyana. The members of the team that I have with me are Tabitha Sarabo, Sidney Nelson, and Clayon Haley. Lady and gentlemen, welcome to African Drums.
Thank you for having
Thank you
us.
for having us.
Okay, so let's talk about your local government experience. So we'll start with you, Clayon. Tell us what it was like for you.
For me, the local government experience, it was a bit of a mixed feelings kind of experience. One, we were out in the communities, we spoke with persons, then we met those who were interested in Youth for Local Government. They liked the plans that we put forward. They said that they support young people coming forward to be a part of the political structure. And then you had those who basically shun us because they thought that one, we were really going to take votes from their party, or two, the good song was we were funded by the PPPC. And so I had that kind of feeling where at one time I was happy at what was happening because of people's response, and then the other side where persons just put up this wall towards you, and I was daunted for some time because I thought to myself, everybody is saying the young people are not getting involved, and when we do decide to get involved, here comes these label and all that. But then, it is a part of a political culture. So all in all, for me, it was a good experience meeting people. It was a good experience, the whole process of registering and actually campaigning. I think for all the young people, it was a great experience, and it's one that we will take with us for a lifetime.
That's so true,
Okay.
so true.
Sydney, what about you?
For me personally, it's a journey or an experience that taught me that the journey is just as important as the destination, the final goal. Because when we started, of course, we want to win at least about 5 seats or so that we ultimately would have a say in local government elections, what happens in Georgetown and throughout Guyana. But being a part of the process has actually, taught us of going out to the people, sharing our plan, our vision, what we had, and actually doing the work, because it was a lot of work we had to do in terms of getting on air, selling our ideas, coming up with different plans, strategies, and even events for our campaign strategy. It was a lot of work, and it really taught us that the journey is evenly important, because another part of being just the journey itself, we ventured in places like Warlock, and we had a chance to interface with some of the residents there. We even had a chance to play even sports with the youngsters. Yes,
Interesting.
true. And the sad part of it, we played a game of football with the youngsters, and we lost miserably. Honestly, I kid you not. But it taught us so much. Coming together shows us that sports actually can bring communities together. And some of these things we really want to see implemented. We're still working on having them implemented throughout Georgetown and in our various constituencies. But definitely, I learned that the process, the journey, is evenly as important as the destination.
Okay, thank you, Sydney. Tabitha, what about you?
I really appreciate what Sidney said. I was not as active as I would have liked to be for obvious reasons. But what where I was sitting most of the time, I was what I saw was the young people. A lot of the young people got themselves involved in an area that they were unfamiliar with. When Clayon decided to start the group, the idea was to give young people a chance to get themselves a little, their foot wet in the political atmosphere, and get a sense of what it means to be a politician and how do you run elections and stuff like that. And so when seeing the young people grow, they had to, as Sidney said, go on television, do interviews. They had radio talk show that they had to speak about their plans. They had to meet people in the community and get their plans over to them in a way that the persons in the community would say, well, yes, I understand what you want to do. I recognize it, and I like what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So those things that they had to learn, and you saw them getting better over time. I think for me, it was all in all a good process. Even though we would say we didn't get any seats, and so that was the end game. I think they learned a lot. A lot of young people learned a lot. They grew a lot, and I think they've become better because of that, and they can go on to do other things because they've gotten that foundation that they would not have gotten if we did not start YFLG.
Okay, so the $1 million question: will you be contesting the next local government elections?
Yes, we will.
No-brainer.
Absolutely.
My bad.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the conditions that exist in Guyana that motivated you guys to participate in local government elections. What are those?
I think the first one would be the lack of youth involvement in politics generally. And as Tabitha alluded, my initial plan or focus, and I think that in itself was a success story for the YFLG, it was to get young people involved and get the unfamiliar faces involved as well. The thing about it is when we reach out to a lot of these young people, it was evident that they had issue with joining certain political groups because they didn't want to be identified. Because if you're with the government, you're supporting the coalition, you're racist as a black man, you're racist. You're supporting the PVP, you're an Indian, you're racist. It's a whole race thing where they twisted or turn it. And us young people, we're trying to break that divide. And so we find that a lot of the youngsters weren't interested in joining a political party, but they wanted to get involved in politics. So I think that in itself, providing that opportunity to young people and recognizing that there's a lack of young people involved in politics and in the decision-making process, it's the main reason why the Youth for Local Government came together.
Okay. Let's talk about the general state of affairs in Guyana following general elections and now following local government elections. And on Thursday, Guyana celebrated her 50th anniversary of independence. What is the state of Guyana currently?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. There are persons who would say that there's nothing much to celebrate. Why are we celebrating 50 years? What have we accomplished to be celebrating anything at 50 years? And then there's a lot to celebrate. We need to, we have reached 50 years of independence. There must be something worthy of celebration. And I think it's mixed. I think we have accomplished much, but there's still a whole lot more that we could have accomplished if it was not for our ethnic or racial strife that is sort of pulling us apart as a nation. I think when it is that you would have looked back of we had varying presidents, they all had different agendas, and they all had something that they brought to the table. Some positive, some negative, right? And with those things, we're looking at the positives alone here, right? With those positive things that they would have brought to the table, we have moved forward. But the thing that I think has us stuck the most is the issue of race in the country, and how it is that to some extent the political at this current juncture, I would call out the PPP here, they're using it to their advantage to get themselves back in power, not try to heal the nation, and the nation needs to be healed. Guyana came out of we had slavery, Then we had internship, and the issues that happened after the East Indians came to Guyana, and you know the contentions that happened at that particular point, where those now emancipated slaves were looking for paid jobs, and then the slave master said, well, you know what, we're not going to give you this, but what we're going to do, we're going to bring persons into the country and pay them what you wanted. And that was the initial issue that occurred. And then when we got to independence, or on the verge of independence, there was some sort of nationhood, some sort of nationalism that occurred at that period, where we saw Jackson and Burnham working together when they started the PPP. And then that broke off, and then we have never really gotten ourselves back after that. The closest we came to that was when Dr. Rodney was here, when he was alive, and he tried his little, as much as he could, to sort of move beyond the race thing to more of a class issue. And so we saw persons that were gravitating to him, but then he did not last. He was killed. And so that also put us back a couple of years, and so we're still dealing with that issue. And I think as long as that issue is on the table, we can try as much to develop our society. Economically, we may do better, but we need that social cohesion, as we speak a lot about now, in order to move forward in a way that we would all be happy to be Guyanese, and not just one section of the population being happy to be Guyanese.
That's so true. That's so true. If I may add on what Tabby just said, another thing that a major issue that stood out was community development. And even before the local government elections, even before we celebrated 50, we still had a need for community development. A lot of communities were left, and we believe that these communities, we should channel resources into them to see them developed. And that's part of the reason that we joined the local government election, and we, Youth for Local Government, got on board, because we wanted to see roads being developed, we wanted to see irrigation fixed, we want to see infrastructural development and the likes. And even after 50, at least we can look to say, our 50 years has passed, this is what we have done as a people, and this is where it has gotten us. What should we do now? And therefore we can make a move and see these things develop and so on.
Okay, so one of the issues that have been in the media and on the ground leading up to the elections is the issue with the mayor and city council and the vendors. And it's ironic that this issue was birthed out of the need to clean up the city for the Jubilee celebrations. What do you think about how the events have unfolded so far?
I think the approach to the situation is important. I can go back to right after the general election, when myself and a few young people, we started the Guyana Beautification Project. We embarked on cleaning a lot of public spaces. What we have done is we have engaged persons who occupy a lot of those same public spaces, and we made them a part of the process, the cleanup activity. You know, we weren't the city council then, but persons were interested in doing so. I think the approach of the council on the issue, it is one of kind of an authoritarian approach, wherein we're the ones with the power, the authority, what we say go. They said there was consultation. I don't call a meeting before the day of your action a consultation. Also, when you consult, you ought to give time, and give adequate time for persons to readjust. We have to take into consideration that persons are vending in these spaces for over 10, 15, 20 years. And for you to come today and say we're moving you because we have to do cleanup, and tomorrow you come and you're ready to break up and dismantle, that would traumatize people. I mean, as much as we wouldn't see it that way, but people are accustomed to this thing. The sad thing is that persons have grown into an attitude of lawlessness and disobeying the law because of what happened with the previous administration. So they feel as though their right is there, even though they're on a public space. Some of them on the pavement, they think, I was here all the years, I'm right to be here, even though it is not right. We do have to cater for those people who in their minds, their mindsets haven't changed with the government. That is how we have to view things. So I think the approach of the council is sad, that they go about this authoritarian manner and not really engage the people. So I think moving forward and implementing different plans, they ought to ensure that they provide time. I got the sense that a lot of what is happening, it is a central government approach towards the redefining of Georgetown, Guyana. The president himself, he spoke about transforming the capital city. He spoke about it at Parliament. He spoke about it at his inauguration. He spoke about it at length, as far as I'm concerned. So I get the idea that it is the president's vision of what he wants Georgetown to be. He is pushing at the council level. That is my interpretation of what is happening. Because when I look at the council, I don't see no clear plans as to what they would have planned to do when they get into office. Because the APNU had not proposed anything to the people when they get into office. So they're there, but things just happening that they didn't even plan amongst themselves. So it has to be coming from somewhere else. But I think the approach was, oh, we got to get it done by the 50th, so by all means possible, y'all got to move, time to break up and move on. And I don't think that is how it should happen.
That's true. I think consultations too were limited with the deadline, like Clayon rightfully said, because for the 50th you had so much expectations, even at the Jubilee Park, for example, just to stray a bit. You see that there was a timeline allocated for these events to be fixed. So the consultation, even though they might would have had consultation, it was limited and didn't allow persons the time to have that transition from being here to what do I do, where do I go next, and what we can put in place to bring in a living.
Okay.
If I could just add
Sure.
something else there though. Yeah, because looking back at how it happened, because it was being said that the cleanup is happening in time for the 50th. On the day on the day when the parade was to leave Stabrook, the drains were nasty. The chains and the stuff that was separating the buses on the 45 and the South Bus Park, a lot of the holes were still there. And if is it that you were supposed to finish this in time, then why haven't you finished it? Also, when I look at projects that the council are doing currently as well, they started with the Merriman's Mall. It's incomplete. They were supposed to finish that by the 50th. They left that off to take on Stabrook, and it's a clear sign as though, you know, there's not a clear-cut plan or vision as to our projects. We're undertaking this and a timeline for execution. Maybe there is a timeline, but I don't know what is causing the switch in the projects, because they've switched. They haven't finished the Kitty Market. It was supposed to be finished some time ago, I believe, and they switched from that to this to that. So I think it is a bit, I can't say a bit, probably there's a lot going on at the council right now, but I would love for the councillors in themselves to come forward and talk about some of these things, but they're being overshadowed by the town clerk, who is doing all the talking, and the mayor is barely doing a little talking. I'm wondering who's really running the council.
Okay, well, I definitely have to advocate for the vendors, because when I pass along the street, they stop me and they complain to me and they say, you must talk about it on your show, right? So I am like, okay, tell me what happened. And one of the things that the vendors said to me was that they spoke to the mayor and city council and they asked them, okay, which are the areas that you're going to be removing stalls from? And they gave them a specific area. And they said, okay, what are the days you're going to be doing cleaning up and whatever? And the vendors said that they left their stalls and came out to help with the cleaning exercise, only to find out that part of that cleaning exercise was to destroy some of their property and to tow the rest of it into city council. So in my opinion, that's disrespectful. Now, you if you have an agenda, then you need to be honest and open with the people, and you don't give them the impression that they're okay, they won't be affected, and then they wake up and they are affected. I think that is one of the issues we have in this country, where the ordinary man does not get respected, and his livelihood is not respected when it comes to that authoritarian level of doing things. Okay, so while we're talking about plans and plans for Georgetown and plans that the city council has or doesn't have, let's talk about some of your plans. You would have put forward a manifesto when you contested local government elections. So tell me about some of the plans that you would have had in your manifesto.
Well, one of the first plan I want to mention, which is something that I spoke to one of the current councillors about, and I think I spoke to the deputy mayor also. Two things. The first one is the constituency offices. We were advocating at length that every constituency should have its own office. Reason being, it is an avenue for engagement with the councillor and the residents directly, and the residents would be able to go to that office, share their concerns, share their plans, their ideas, and the councillors can then put together those plans, idea, issues, whatever complaints, take it to the council and have it dealt with, rather than persons having to run to the council and you know you gotta wait long. I was told that that is not happening. The council toss that idea aside. They're not interested in constituency offices. Secondly, I spoke to the deputy mayor about a solid waste management plan, and it's an idea that we had proposed in our manifesto as well, in relation to extracting solid waste out of Guyana to a foreign company overseas that does upcycling and recycling. And what happens is when the company does the upcycling and recycling, they would give back to the country in some way. For example, they would upcycle chewing gum because it's plastic, and they would make these playground swingers and slides, and then they would come back to your country and they would set up playground facilities for you. And I said that that was an idea that the council could take in the development of these green spaces. They need swingers, they need slides, they need these in areas to be set up. You can extract your garbage to a company who can do that for you for free. So you don't have to pay a dime for that those facilities to be set up in different communities. So that are two of the ideas that we put forward. I'm yet to get a response from the deputy mayor on the solid waste plan that I asked him to meet. He said, I'm free, I don't have time, but we haven't met yet. But those are just two of the ideas, and I know my colleagues will also share some of the ideas that we had proposed in the manifesto.
Another one that really looks at community development, one of the things that we wanted to see implemented was a community farm. And a community farm is going to look at one, job creation, because at least in constituency 5 where I'm from, we have an issue of a lot of youngsters, they don't have jobs, or they don't have employment. So we wanted to create a farm. So one, we're going to have these persons, the residents of the community, being able to work on the farm. And of course, as byproducts, you're going to have, let's say if we do a cherry farm and an orchard, we could have jam. We could have different byproducts coming out of it, so that one, the community can have its own revenue. And just only the other day, I've been able to speak with the newly elected council of Constituency 5, Mr. Peter. And I've been sharing some of these same ideas with him. And it really looks like, these ideas, they've been seen for the merit that they have, so that we can now look at the creation of jobs and just the likes for Constituency 5 and through.
Okay. There are a couple of other ideas, but I just wanted to mention two. One thing, there is one issue that currently comes up, is the fact that they're doing a lot of the cleaning, and there are a lot of persons who are on government reserves that shouldn't be there, and they're sort of impeding on some of the cleaning of the canals in Georgetown. And one of the ideas that we had was that, one, we could find ways to consult with the people that are on those reserves to get them off of those reserves. And we were trying to figure out what way that we can do that so that they are not negatively, well, you're affected, but not in a way that leaves you less off once we have accomplished the task. And one thing that we were thinking about was, one, going into the communities that they're closest to. And if they're usually a lot of dilapidated homes, persons have left the country but are not looking after their houses, their lots that are in those communities that nobody using currently. And what we thought would have been a good idea would be to contact those persons, see if it is that they're still interested in those lots, and if they're not, then the city could either be the liaison between the persons on those reserves and those individuals to get them to either, one, buy the lots from them so that they come off of the reserve and they have a place within the community, so that they can live. That's one. The other thing was we think is very necessary is those multi-purpose facilities for young people. We still have, I'm quite sure when you went into Warlock to play football, it was on the street. Right? So we need a lot more of those sort of facilities for young people in the communities, not necessarily on the street, but well thought out, planned multi-purpose facilities that looks after, one, their sporting needs, two, their academic needs and the skills, those that are maybe not necessarily academically inclined, but they may be good with their hands, they may be technically driven, and so we need to create facilities for them within their communities where they can thrive in those particular areas. So those are two of the things that come to mind that we were really pushing when it is that we were running.
If you'd allow me to expand on something Tabitha said, in relation to those on reserves as well, a few months back, the council would have made a public statement saying that it had identified lands in Georgetown to build housing for its administrative officers. And we were even looking at that option, seeing that most of these admin officers probably own their own property by now. We were saying for those on reserves, we can look at building schemes, housing schemes, and use that as an avenue to generate income for the council. And we can work out a payment plan based on the income of those who are living on the reserve, because some of them are poor, they're working, some are vending, so their income is not substantial, but we would have worked out a payment plan based on household numbers, based on income, and every month they would have made a payment for a specific size of property within the housing scheme. So we're saying, rather than offering your council, not your councils, your admin officers, the privilege of owning a house on the by the council, through the council, we were saying use those lands to build housing schemes, get the people off the reserve, and then clean the city, and you get the reserve to do what it was intended to, because some of these reserves probably was left there. When you look at it, you can look at road development for the various communities to expand. So the reserves are needed, but just how we go about it, and I do hope that approach is something that the council is looking at, because we can't deal with the bulldozer type of approach. And one of the other things, something I had another thought that came to me. Well, anyway, I guess I'm not to share that one, but yeah.
Okay, what about zoning in Georgetown? Was that anywhere in your manifesto?
Yes, it was. I think our manifesto has covered just about everything you would have thought about. We had the issue of zoning, because in talking to residents, we found out that a lot of them were affected by a lot of businesses in the communities, and also we looked at zoning in terms of housing development, and also we even look. Now we come back to me. We even looked at the relocation of some of the bus parks as under the purpose of zoning as well, because we found that having the entire bus park in that one location also aids in traffic buildup. So we were looking to spread them out. And interestingly, the deputy mayor responded to something I posted on Facebook, and he was telling me to read the Georgetown Development Plan by Mr. Khan. And I haven't read it, but some of the ideas that we had proposed for the relocation of the bus park are similar to what the council is now taking from his idea. So, but one of the things we're looking at also is that the rezoning of the bus park is also going to help with the situation with the vendors, because wherever the buses go, that is where the people go, and then the vendors would obviously have to relocate to some extent. So we're saying with that, when we change that zoning, we would also be able to build small malls or so with the new bus park to house vendors. So we would have taken the people from Stabrook eventually, and you would have been able to spread them at different locations, easing the congestion on the road, easing the traffic buildup around Stabrook area, and it's more effective for persons who are coming from certain areas as well. I know Tabitha was looking at zoning in relation to businesses, and whether certain businesses should be in communities, and how do we deal with that. That in itself, we talked about consulting with those business owners to see how best we can deal with that, because at the end of the day, we don't want to cut anybody out of business, we don't want to take bread out of anybody's mouth, but we also have to cater for everybody. So we were looking at how is it that we can to some extent reduce the effect on residents, and whether or not some persons would be willing to relocate. So it's all about consultation as well with that.
Okay, and the plan has to be cohesive.
Yeah.
Because I like the idea of zoning as well as relocating the vendors to go with the different bus parks and whatnot. Okay, let's talk about crime in Georgetown. We know that it's a major issue, and there has been some controversy about whether it's increasing or decreasing. What do you think is a comprehensive way to handle the situation with crime? Because I'm sure that is one of the areas that, well, in my opinion, that is one of the areas that the mayor and city council should be a part of as well.
Yeah.
So they're turning to the only female on set.
It's a tough one in terms of crime. But what I think we need to look at is the source, the root cause of crime in the society. We have a lot of young people that have nothing to do, right? And that's a sad reality. and they've grown up in a period, sad to say, where it was okay to do wrong and one, get away with it, and two, live large over your ill-gotten gains. That was the seemingly okay thing to do for a while. It started from the top and it just went through the entire society. My honest opinion is that your leaders, they dictate how the society functions, right? And they may not be able to come into everybody's home and say this is how you must treat your child or this is how you must train your child. But when you see your leaders act in a certain way, it perpetuates in the entire society. It gives the society the acknowledgement, well, this is what is right and this is what isn't. And based on all the audits which sort of, sort of stamped what it is that persons were talking about before those audits, so that what was going on at the top echelons in our society, I think it sort of reverberated to the rest of the society. And so we have a lot of young people who have grown up in that culture. Then we also have the part where they're cutting down on a lot of the drugs, and so they're passing through Guyana. And that is having a ripple effect on the young people who are getting their money from helping in that in the transfer of drugs from through Guyana to other ports. And so they now have to figure out a way, how do I now make money when I was making money through these means, and the government now can't do, and whatever, it's cutting off my source of income. And so what I think needs to be done is more effort needs to be placed on getting to those young people. Because what we're going to find is every other morning they're going to continue because they have to live. They're accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and so they will find means of trying to get that money. And unless we get to them early enough, what will end up is that most of them will end up in jail. Because we now see the police are doing their jobs. So if it is that we don't put a particular emphasis on that, create a strategy which says, you know what, these young people, we know we may not be able to catch them in the act or catch them before they get to prison, so let us do something that would cater to the fact that they don't probably have the means of getting a 9-to-5 job. How do we deal with them now so as to ensure that we don't have to see them in court and behind jail in a couple of months? So I think that is the strategy that needs to be emphasized. That's the strategy that needs to be taken on board, so that it's really sad when you see when the persons that killed that professor, all of them under 18. The young lady that killed her father. It's just sad when they're all under 25 and they're going through this thing. And we must find a way to deal with it, or else our young people that we're saying are the future will be all in jail if it is that we don't deal with that situation.
That's so true. And also, adding to what Tabitha said, looking at crime in terms of breaking and entry or armed robbery, one of the things that we want to implement was a community policing group. And what we believe that would have served as a deterrent to persons going out and robbing persons, so that you have these bodies, let's say, made up of volunteers or even trained professionals. You're going through the communities and you're providing somewhat of a surveillance throughout these communities, so persons wouldn't feel the need to just get up and go, because there's someone out there that will intercede and have something done on their behalf. So we believe that really would have worked in reducing the crime rate, especially as it relates to break and entry and armed robberies.
But Guyana has this history of vigilante justice. With this community policing group, how do we ensure that they do not take it to the extreme where they go about beating people? Because I've seen it happen. I mean, you and I'm sure we've all heard of it, where people in the community beat these people to a pulp, and the police had to come and rescue the criminal from the community. So how, when with a community policing group, how do we ensure that it doesn't go to the point of vigilante justice?
That's a very good question. And if I might add, one of the things that we really want to recommend is training, because we believe that with training and professionalism, you'd be a difference in the way that you handle a situation, as opposed to just, let's say, just 5 or 10 persons from a community just gather and they carry out perhaps hate crimes or whatever they're doing.
Before I know Clayon want to come. Before Clayon comes in, let me just say the police that do that as well.
I was just going to say that even though he's saying give them training, who are the people that are training these people?
It's ensuring that you first put the right persons in the job, because there are a lot of police that so I probably shouldn't say that, but there are a lot of police who are in the force that didn't go there for altruistic reasons, and so we need to deal with that as well. But I'll let you on.
If we were in school, right, you know that oftentimes they always put the bad student to be a prefect. And you know that to some extent it helped. I don't know if any of you are a bad student.
I guess you were.
I mean, I
was a prefect, so
I wasn't a
don't know.
prefect, but I've seen many bad students became prefect and head prefect, and to some extent I have seen that changed them. No, with Sidney's approach, in my mind I was thinking a lot of the same young people in the community that might be involved in a lot of this snatching, and so might be the best set to pull into this community policing group, so they'll be watching themselves to an extent. But on a serious note, Tabitha started off by saying we need to look at the root cause, and I think we were looking at that while preparing our manifesto. That is why we heavily looked at programs to engage young people. I have been tracking the crime situation in Guyana from last year to present. And what I've realized, I've written them down. The amount of young people involved in crimes, their age, and the type of crime they have committed. And I can tell you, and this is guaranteed based on the records I have, that over 80% of the crimes that were committed from 2015 January to now are young people, are youth. Categorized on the youth between the age of, I think I'll start from 15 because it's 15 they were starting from 15 all the way to 30. 80% of the crimes are young people. What has happened, as Tabitha was saying, is that young people have nothing to do. And they want to get money, and they don't want to work for the money. They don't want an 8 to 5 job for the money. Now, some of them have skills, some of them don't. How do we then engage them meaningfully and ensure that they don't get involved in other business is something that we have to all sit down and look at. For me, crime fighting is not just about the police, it's not just about plans, but it's about the whole community and the whole country as a whole getting involved. Everybody has to be on the lookout for what is happening. Parents need to give account for their children and stop owning up to the thing that, oh, he's a good boy, he wasn't this, he wasn't that. But when you know that they're doing wrong, report the wrong so that you can cut it before it gets into something even bigger. But we have proposed programs to engage young people from the root level. We looked at those who are skilled, those who don't want to do an 8 to 5, but you have a skill. That's why we looked also at something like farming, because it's something that you can do. You don't have to do it for an entire day in an office or so on. We looked at persons creating small businesses, utilizing their skill to formulate a service. If you are good at writing, if you're good at reciting, we can, amongst yourself as a group, you can start up a little business that does adverts or promo for people, and then you can be the writer and this person can do the voiceover. We looked at things like that, simple things that you can then engage them in an area where they are comfortable with. They like to do this. They got some of them boys, they like to rhyme, they know poetry. Engage them in doing spoken word, provide an avenue for them to then record that and sell a CD and put it out there. So it's all about meeting them at the level they're at, what they can do, and help them to see that there is potential with that thing that is inside of them, and help them to develop that. So a series of engagement in relation to having talks with them, provide resources necessary for the development, because their thing is nobody is providing an opportunity for them, so they will do it by any means possible and get what they have to get.
True.
So it's all about reaching out to the young people, providing the opportunity, and then nurturing them along the way, not just dropping them. We also looked at inter-constituency activities so that they can form better relationship with other young people who are skilled in certain areas, who are also struggling like them, so that they can feed off of each other. So I think a support group as well is needed for young people, so that we can help each other to move along in the process. So dealing with the root cause. With the more technical aspect of it, we were looking at the idea of implementing surveillance cameras, but we were looking at strategic points within communities, at the exit points and the entrance point. For every community, it's within Georgetown. Reason being is, if a crime is committed in, let's say, right out on Mandela here, the person has to go straight along Mandela into the back road, or that way, or cross into 2 other communities. Now, which is East La Penitence, or can't remember the name of over this side. But Once the person enters the community, if the entrance and exit point to that community has cameras, whenever they leave, they will be identified based on what they've entered with. So if we can have a system where we can have entry points and exit points along with the alleyway, some main alleyway points that connect to other communities, there will be a way to trace where persons go when they commit crime. I know it's sounding kind of wild right now, but if we can sit down and look at that strategy, it makes a lot of sense in identifying where persons go after they committed a crime. We have some cameras, and in the past we have seen that we have caught a few criminals by using the street cameras that we have on some roads. So why not then develop that system so that we can better be able to track persons?
Okay, let's talk about the 50th anniversary of independence. What do you think should have been Guyana's approach to why are you laughing, to celebrating 50 years of independence? I know there was the flag raising ceremony, a lot of shows here and there. What do you think should have been Guyana's focus for its 50th?
The theme says, if I'm correct, reflect, inspire and celebrate, or reflect, celebrate and inspire. And that in itself should have been the guideline for the celebration of the 50th. Reflect. I haven't been to any events.
Shame on you.
I was about to say I haven't seen at any of the events, but that I wasn't there. But based on the content of the event, because I've read a lot and I've been following what was showing on television, on stream and so on, even the symposiums at the Arthur Center. But I have not seen any reflection on our 50 years. I've not seen a clear outline of, after 66, probably in the next 5 years, this is what we have achieved, this is what has happened. Myself and some other people, we were talking about some of the achievements of Guyana in terms of some of the things we've created. The Greco radio, the tapir, the factories that we had. I haven't seen anybody making mention of those things as an act of reflection. I would have even used those things as an act of inspiration to the younger generation. Because if we could have made radio then, why aren't we making flat screen TVs now? So I would have used that those reflections, we would have celebrated them, and then we would have used it as inspiration for the young people. Even in the float parade, I haven't seen nothing from the 1970s, 80s. I haven't seen no costume that depicted that era. Somebody could have made the tapir, let young people know. A lot of young people don't know the tapir was created in Guyana. It was built, created, assembled in Guyana. We assembled refrigerators in Guyana. We made the Greco radio. Somebody called to say...
We even had a glass factory.
We had a glass factory, a clay brick factory. Somebody said that they went to Dominica recently, as last year in the 90s, and they saw one of our refrigerators there.
Wow.
Somebody said they still have a radio. Use these things. You have the team. Reflect, celebrate them, and inspire the young people to move forward. That is what I expected, and that is what I didn't see.
But some people, mind you, don't know what a tapir is. You understand? So a lot of these things, like Clayon rightfully said, we could have brought these things to the forefront so that the younger generation, we could really see these things and have an appreciation of it. I mean, me personally, I've been to the flag raising, and I was somewhat impressed with some of the activities, like the march and so on and so forth, but yet still much more could have been done, like Clayon rightfully said.
Okay, so are these things exhibiting or symbolizing a larger problem in the Guyanese society? Because we have the issue of the haphazard movements of the mayor and city council. Now we have this lack of, consideration or innovation in planning our 50th anniversary celebration. Is this symbolic of a wider problem in the Guyanese society where the government and the others generally in society don't take the time to plan and to chart their course to ensure that Guyana goes in a truly productive direction?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in the sense that during the PVPC reign, what I have noticed is that they have attempted to erase a lot of our history. They have attempted to whitewash it with their own works. And I think to some extent that has cleared from the mindset of our young people, some who would have gotten snippets of what the history of Guyana was like. It would have erased that from their memory. The government itself, it's a new government, and while it's 50 years, it's their baby stage. And they haven't had the experience of taking on such an event. And I think what should have happened in this case is for broader consultation in relation to how do we celebrate this. This is a milestone. This is not something that we can just do ordinary. And like I said, the fact that they came up with that punchline, reflect, celebrate, inspire, that should have been there. Those three words in itself, for me, 50th would have guided how I program all the activities. So I think inexperience to some extent has to do, I played a lot in the planning and the execution of the event. And I think the not knowing some of us not knowing our history and not being able to really bring that to the fore is also a reason, and that is why I said yes and no, and I blame to some extent the PP for trying to erase that. But we have a lot of historians in the current government. The president is an historian.
I was just about to say that, because when you made the point about inexperience, a lot of the government ministers are not young.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, they're pushing 70. A lot of them are either already 70 or very close to that. So in my humble opinion, these people would have been around in Guyana long enough to know, okay, these were the significant moments in history. These are the things that matter to Guyanese culture and the heart of the Guyanese people. So these are the things that we need to emphasize now that it is 50 years of independence.
You know, there's a saying that with age comes wisdom. I don't believe that. Seriously. I believe that in my quarter century, I might be wise than a lot of those who are 70 and 80. Yourself, I believe so as well. For me, age has nothing to do with it. Age is just a number, as we say. What we have noticed with the current administration, while a lot of them would have been around for long, is their inability to interpret what they have in their head or what they have seen and learned into modern day reality. And I think that in itself is a problem. While I believe they have plans, while I believe they have ideas, I believe that they don't have the ability to translate it into modern day reality. While they might know these things, they probably haven't even thought to themselves, this is what we should be doing at the 50th. They have the information in their heads, yes, but to bring it out and how to bring it out, they don't know the know-how. And that is why it's important to consult, because I don't know the information, and a lot of young people don't, but maybe if some of us were a part of that committee or were consulted, we could have said, this might be the best thing to do. Don't y'all know about what happened in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s? And we would have been able to pull that out of them.
But that is interesting for me, because during the campaign trail for general elections, we saw the APNU AFC as well as the PPPC, because all of them are sitting there, government and opposition. Mm-hmm. It is a state event, so I am thinking that both parties should be working together for the celebration of the independence. Both sides pulled out a lot of youth for their campaigns. So where are these young people now to help with the execution of events like celebrating the 50th anniversary?
Well, it's like I said, age doesn't have wisdom. Persons are there and they believe that they know what has to be done. They want it to be done in a certain way. I think what has happened with the coalition to an extent is that a lot of its young people has failed. A lot of the young people who are part of the campaign has failed the coalition thus far. I wrote about this on Facebook, saying that a lot of them were talking and they were calling for youth to get involved, and youth going to take a seat at the table, and youth are going to be a part of this when you vote for us. Now their parties are in government, and many of them are working with the government now, but you don't hear them advocating for youth. And that is why I'm saying they have failed the coalition in itself, because the coalition now has no voice of the youth anymore, because the youth aren't interested in being the voice of the youth. They're all working and they all are comfortable where they are. So that is why we will find now that the senior guys will do what they see fit within their best interests when it comes to national events, when it comes to organizing and planning, because their own young people aren't really interested. So I think that is the problem. Yes, the government and opposition should be working together, but we all know what happened prior to the 50th. The opposition decided they're not going to be involved in the committees and blah, blah, blah. And then the 50th with the walkout parade. So it's about maturity, right? So Tabitha said it earlier, the opposition, they have a role to play in the whole thing of breaking the racial divide and also fostering unity. But they are using this as an avenue for political gain for themselves. So the further they can divide the country, for them, it's the better.
Okay, so Guyana, even at 50 years of independence, is still considered a developing country. Do you think that in any time soon, Guyana will reach the status of a developed country?
I think that would depend on the road that we choose, because like we have established now, this 50th really should be a point of reflection. We should really look back again, like I said before, on what is it that we've done so far and where has it taken us. And if we can really look at these things and organize and put our thoughts together as to which road we should take. If we don't do that, I don't see we going anywhere in the near future. But if we can get this done, if we can get it right this time, definitely the sky's the limit.
I think timeline is important. I believe that we're gonna be deemed as a developed country in some time in the near future. But I think the vision of the country, it is what I am most concerned about, because I can tell you offhand, I've heard the president speak a lot of times. Do I know the clear-cut vision of the president for Guyana? I don't think so. And if the people do not understand the clear vision of our current president, then for me that says that we're going to find ourselves in a place where people are going to create their own visions as to what is to happen moving forward. The opposition going to have their vision. The different parliamentarians and politicians will have their own vision of what we should have. The people will have their own vision of what we should have. And so we're going to find ourselves where we have all of these different visions, but the man who is leading us, we don't understand his. So persons are going to be pulled in different directions. Groups of persons are going to be pulled in different directions, following different visions. And I think as long as we can get a clear-cut vision for Guyana, one that is clear, one that is achievable, and the people can understand and buy into that, then I believe we can estimate within a time frame that is the next 30-40 years whether Guyana will be established as a developed country. The resources are coming in for us to be established. Oil is here. With oil we can be developed in another 30 years or less. How do we manage that? What do we do? What is the vision moving forward with that sector? So those are the things to take into consideration, but I do believe in the near future, I should say.
Okay, well, I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to give each of you a minute to articulate for me your vision of Guyana in the next 50 years and what you're doing to achieve this vision.
A minute. Well, there's a lot that can be accomplished. We have a lot going for us as a nation. We found oil. Wow. That's one. We still have a lot of our natural resources. I think once it is that we could spend some serious dollars on a human resource, I think we'll be very far along in 50 years. I think I could see us, I don't know if in the short term we develop, but I could see in the next 50 years us being a developed country, because we have a whole lot going for us. All we need to do is develop our human resources. Once we can accomplish that with education, there's nothing that can stop a nation once a nation is an educated nation. Your mind responds to things differently. Your innovation juices run differently. You react to issues and situations differently once you're educated. And I think if it is that the government, this particular government, is interested in seeing us move leaps and bounds in the next 50 years, that they would put and pump as much money as possible into our education system. I see that there's a COI out right now to try to understand and consult as to what is really wrong with our education system so that it can be fixed. And once that that is done and they start the actual process. I think that is the route that we need to I don't know I don't want to pull it up, but that's the route that we need to deal with first before we can see ourselves going any particular place within the next 50 years. But I think we have a whole lot positive ahead of us, and it's just for us as individuals to decide, well, you know what, we need to move in this particular direction. And as an individual, what can I do? I can as much as I can possibly do, inspire other young people, get them to understand that there's more to life than just maybe the partying, not knocking parties, but than just partying, and just helping persons to recognize that life is a lot more than just what you see, and you have to aspire to what it is that you want to see in the future.
Okay, and you're already helping on the education front
because
you are an educator. So
yes, I am.
There you go.
Me
Sydney, a minute.
I know, right? Sorry.
Me personally, I believe that youth and community development, they kind of underpin national development. So I believe if we look at these same areas, we have already started along the local government campaign. I believe we continue along the same line, looking at youth development, looking at the youth, see where the talents are, identifying these talents and capitalizing on them, see what we can turn over. The country is going to benefit holistically. The same for communities. If we have stronger communities, better communities, Guyana is going to ultimately benefit from these things. So I believe that youth and community development kind of underpin national development. So
now what are you doing?
Me personally, like I said before, I'm a part of a movement, a group that really looks at finding talents where they may lie, and capitalizing on them, looking at how we could develop the communities in which we live, and Georgetown, Guyana, even bigger. So basically being a part of a movement like this, identifying persons that are like-minded and working with them to champion community youth development and all these things, I think that's going to make the difference in Guyana for the next 50 years or so.
Okay, thank you, Sidney.
Right.
1 minute.
Yes, I'm not gonna. For me, I believe that the youth of the country, we are the engine of growth and development for the country, and I believe that within the next 50 years, we should heavily invest in our youth to ensure that we secure our future. Saying that to say, when we look at our neighboring countries, a lot of the economies there are being crippled at present. We can look at Venezuela currently and what is happening there, and then we can take a look at where we are positioned right now in Guyana. Not to say that the interesting thing is, while we do not have a large army like Venezuela, we found out if we look at it from a standpoint, we're in a position where we can be I don't want to say the wrong word here. We're in a position where we can be helpful to an extent to Venezuela, but more so have the upper hand over them to an extent. Not to, break and need to start a war or anything, but because there is a need in that country. And for me, moving forward 50 years, I believe that Guyana is going to develop in such a way that all of our neighboring countries are going to be dependent on Guyana, because we have the natural resources, we have the land. And once we invest in our young people, who are the engine of growth and development, to ensure that we can nurture, protect, and develop our country and have proper relations with those around us, I believe that Guyana is going to be a developed country, as we were talking about before, sooner rather than later. But we need to understand that sooner rather than later, we have to invest in our young people. What I'm doing presently is continuing to engage with young people to get them involved. I believe that the only way we can achieve is if the young people are involved. If they are not involved, then we're going down a lost road, and that is the main reason why I've decided to do this. So moving forward is continue to be a voice for young people as well, because I take some lashing on Facebook when I talk about young people and the government not doing this for young people, but somebody has to take the licks. Jesus Christ took it, right?
Amen. Amen. We've come to the end of our program, Pastor Clayon, Sidney, and Tabitha. Thank you for being on African Drums.
Thank
you
for having us.
Viewers, thank you for staying with us. This has been African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. Please like our Facebook page, it's Cuffy250, And subscribe to our YouTube channel, also Cuffy250, so that you can see videos of this show. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Cuffy250gy@gmail.com, and please donate to the cause. I'm Elsie Harry. See you next time, and I hope that you've been enjoying the Independence celebrations.